When you know what you want for the future, you need the present to line up with your goals. UCF Online offers more than 100 fully online programs in healthcare, engineering, criminal justice, and more, so you can get to your future and beyond.
From the University of Central Florida's Center for Distributed Learning
and the University of Louisville's Delphi Center for Teaching and Learning,
I'm Tom Cavanaugh.
And I am Kelvin Thompson.
And you, friends, are listening to Topcast, the teaching online podcast. Hello, Kelvin.
Hello there, Dr. Thomas B. Cavanaugh.
Yeah, you're using the whole name. You sound like my mom, although...
Does she refer to you as doctor?
I make her, yeah. No, yeah. But it would be, I'd get the whole, first, middle, last name if I was in trouble or something.
Mm-hmm,
yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, you're not in trouble today.
Good. So, as we were welcoming each other to the podcast, maybe we should say hi to any new listeners that we have. Hi, new listeners. If you are new to listening, welcome to Topcast.
Welcome.
If you're unaware, we like to talk about coffee a little bit at the beginning. We try to connect the coffee to the episode topic somehow because, we build the show as a collegial conversation over coffee about online blended digital teaching and learning with a couple of colleagues. I worked all my alliteration in there.
I know it. Yeah.
And if you're not new to listening to Topcast, welcome back. We're glad you're here too, but maybe consider sharing Topcast with some of your close and maybe not so close friends who might enjoy it.
Yeah, that sounds great. Welcome.
So
glad
I
you're
see
here.
you sipping. Speaking of coffee, Kelvin, as we like to ask, what's in the thermos?
Well, from the thermos poured into the cup today, Tom, is a single origin Tanzanian peaberry roasted locally here in Louisville by Sunergus Coffee. And it occurs to me it's probably been a while since I commented about peaberry coffees. As a reminder, most coffee cherries, we call them, the fruit of the coffee bush, most of those contain two seeds that we call coffee beans, but occasionally one coffee cherry contains one combo, jumbo-sized, two-in-one coffee bean. And we use peaberry to refer to that larger, unusual occurrence. And I thought today's peaberry coffee was maybe somewhat appropriate for drinking along with today's episode. I'm curious what you're drinking. I'll say my coffee is tasty, and I'm curious if either one of us can find a connection to today's episode in either one of our coffees.
Well, one of those requests is going to be easier than the other. I'll tell you what I'm drinking. I'm drinking cold, clear, deconstructed coffee without flavor. So, Water, yes. That's what I got going this afternoon. As far as the connection goes, I don't know, something 2-in-1 maybe. We have a guest who's been on before, so this is the second appearance. So
that's right.
I don't know. Am I close?
Yeah, that's kind of what I was going for. It may be a little bit of a reach, but I kind of think of today's guest appearance as kind of a A-side and B-side of an old, 45 vinyl record, because while we have had return guests, they usually have a little bit more space between them than today, because we had a guest just a few months ago and we said, hey, you're dealing with topics that are changing so fast, we're probably going to have you back soon. And we have. So you're going to tell us about today's guest, Tom?
Yeah, I'm happy to. So Kelvin, you recently, again, interviewed Nicolaas Matthijs. Nicolaas is Chief Product Officer for Anthology. And as you said, when he was on last time, we said we would have him back within a few months, in anticipation of kind of all of various rapid technological developments, especially in AI. So as a reminder, Nicolaas has 20 years of experience with educational technology and comes from a family of educators. Notably, Nicolaas was co-founder of Frontier, the original developers of the tool later known as Blackboard Ally. Nicolaas Matthijs holds a graduate degree in artificial intelligence and natural language processing from the University of Cambridge. So, Kelvin, is there anything you want to say about the interview before we jump to it?
No, I mean, I think Nicolaas is a good guy. He's knowledgeable. He's in our space, really kind of watching and helping shape, but watching also the developments in how AI assistance is increasingly being built into our technology platform. So it was good to catch up with him and hear his insights into how this stuff just changes right before us. It's like being in one of those time-lapse little videos, and you see the building construct, whoosh, it's like changing constantly.
Yeah. All right. So with no further ado, here is your interview with Nicolaas Matthijs.
Hi, Nicolaas. Welcome back to Topcast.
Hi, Kelvin. Thanks so much for having me again. It's a pleasure.
Well, hey, we like you. We'll have you back some more. It'll be good.
And anytime.
When you were here with us last time, which wasn't that long ago, you said, I think we will see over the next months and years, especially, generative AI technology leveraged within the tools we use on a day-to-day basis to help us solve some of the problems or fulfill some of the needs that we're trying to accomplish kind of in our day in and day out work through those tools. I thought we might start there with this visit to Topcast. I mean, obviously it hasn't been years since you were here. It might feel like years, but it hasn't actually been years. It's been months, though. And so I thought from your vantage point, which is so much closer to the action in technology platform development in service of higher education than most of our listeners are, what new developments or trends are you seeing now with regard to AI integration into the technology platforms we're using for, maybe we'll say, non-AI specific purposes?
Yeah, and there's as you're saying, I think it was about 5 months ago since we last talked, but it feels like an eternity in terms of what's currently happening. I think there's kind of a few trends. I think last time we talked about that we kind of expect AI to increasingly be embedded within the tools and just be part of the tools, fairly invisible. I think we have seen that a lot more over the last several months, almost to the extent where I think the pendulum has almost swung too far, where I think there's been a lot of cases in the industry where it almost feels like AI has become a goal in itself rather than a tool that can help solve a real problem. And I think that pendulum is going to have to come back a little bit. And I think over the last several months, I've seen so many tools outside of education, sometimes inside of education as well, that all have this AI assistant button or kind of AI capability button. And so we're still in a place where it is very visible that you're kind of bringing in the AI component of the product, of the solution. So it hasn't quite reached that state of truly seamless integration yet. Mm-hmm. And I think we're at a point where we're really trying to slap it onto everything that we do. Mm-hmm. And maybe that pendulum is going to have to come back a little bit. So that's been interesting. I think we'll want to keep an eye on that. But I do still feel like we're on that path to very seamless embedding. I feel that the kind of the conversational UI as a way of interacting with generative AI, that is actually weakening a little bit. I think it's in many cases no longer the primary way of interacting with generative AI. So I think that will be really interesting to keep an eye on. The other thing that I've noticed a very significant change in over the last several months is the comfort level and the acceptance of AI being integrated within tools. And I'll give a little bit of an example if that's okay. So about a year ago, we launched our AI design assistant within our LMS solution, which at the time was really kind of, I think, early on relative to where it was in the market. And at the point of launching, and that was really aimed at kind of instructors, at faculty. And at the point that was launched, we noticed initial excitement, but a lot of anxiety and skepticism as well. Mm-hmm. And so that was at our conference exactly a year ago. And we just had our last conference a week ago. And so we announced some additional AI capabilities, some of which were student facing. And I'm happy to talk about those if you're interested. But what was really interesting to me is the difference in response in terms of where last year it was kind of careful or kind of, careful excitement, but with a lot of concern, seeing what other people were going to do. Are they going to enable before we enable it? This year, the response was very different. Even though it was student facing, pretty much everyone that I talked to last week basically immediately said, we are enabling this day one. So I think kind of the combination of maybe trust that has been built over the last year, just increasing comfort, increasing presence in other tools, but also another one that we are hearing a lot of is now student demands that these tools are actually part of the learning environment. That students are really expecting for this to be part of what they what they interact with, what they do as part of their education. And so maybe the combination of all of those things appears to have kind of significantly moved the needle on just the level of comfort. So I think we're in a place where it's expected now. I think the big next step is actually, when I kind of think about the next steps, I think it's twofold. It's one, are we going to find that right balance where we are going to apply the technology in the places where it truly solves a problem, and kind of be really focused on that? And then the second one, I think, is going to be around licensing as well. That's been another huge trend over the last couple of months, I think, where I think it's increasingly becoming clear that generative AI is not cheap, it's expensive. And it is increasingly being used, I think, by companies all over as a way to essentially charge extra for what they do. And I think the likes of Microsoft did that, the likes of Salesforce did that, and it's been kind of everywhere. But I'm seeing that is increasingly becoming problematic for the recipients of the technology and the buyers of the technology. And so that'll be really interesting to keep an eye on as well. Do these things become more and more seamlessly embedded, or do they continue to be this kind of second tier that requires additional cost to be able to get the value out of that? I think that's going to be quite interesting too.
Yeah, all of that's really interesting, Nicolaas. Where my head kind of went, and maybe we can stay here for a moment before digging into picking your brain further on related topics. But as you were talking throughout the different strands that you were exploring, I was thinking about, do you know this construct, the Gartner hype cycle, the hype curve? I was thinking about that and a bit of like the spike, right? The peak of inflated expectations. And I was thinking about that. You were sort of describing it's almost a solution in search of a problem, like, kind of the de rigueur kind of like, oh, got to have an AI thing, it's got to be a button, or it's got to say AI, or I don't care what it does. Just make sure it's there, right? And I wonder, like you talked about the greater seeming comfort level when you split screen a year ago, as we're recording this, till now. Comfort level, but how does that square with that ubiquity, peak of inflated expectations? Maybe there's a delivery on an inherent promise of AI integration, and maybe there's not. I wonder how all that sets us up for the near-term future, and things like licensing, as you said. And I was at a professional meeting really recently where we were talking about, we could really go off the rails on this topic, but we were talking about with folks in roles kind of like mine, that there is some hesitancy, some risk aversion in some higher ed institutions, and some desire to like formally invest in, buy, license something in order to like institution specific, right? In order to like protect data and, kind of walled garden the AI stuff. And then we got into this subtopic of, Yeah, but as AI is built into any number of other platforms, for a while, our procurement offices aren't going to recognize that. They're just going to be focused on all the, well, what are all the policies and procedures related to, buying a big AI thing? They're not going to see the integrated AI until they do, and then all procurement will grind to a halt because there'll be too much obstruction to get anything. So I wonder about even how that's really not a question, that's more of a statement, I suppose. But I do wonder how this standalone versus integrated versus licensed separately set of tools, I wonder how that's going to square even with just the logistics of procurement and adoption. It makes my eyes water a little bit.
I would agree with that. I think there's some significant challenges ahead, and I think thinking about the hype cycle is actually quite relevant here, and it's very unclear to me where we are on that hype cycle. Are we still very much on the way up? Are we near the top? I think it is very difficult to say, and I definitely didn't want to suggest that there haven't been really good applications of AI.
Sure.
But I think there's also been many where I think you're right, that maybe the problem tail is wagging the solution tail is wagging the problem dog. And maybe it is things like the licensing, the cost side of things, the data privacy side of things, the IP side of things that will cause it to kind of come back down into that trough of disillusionment, as I think they call it. But we may very well still be kind of on the way up on that hype cycle as well. But AI to me is a really interesting one where it's one of those things that really shouldn't be on the hype cycle at all. It's really it's purely a tool. It's a technical solution that can be applied to different problems, and it's really those problems that should be on the hype cycle. And I think our ultimate long term is going to be that AI will go away as a goal in itself. It will just kind of become one of the ways in which we solve problems as society or as products, and that's probably where it needs to end up. Because if it is too much a goal in itself, as we were saying, it becomes it sometimes stops being helpful. But I also think you're right from a procurement perspective. And maybe the shift in comfort level that we've seen maybe is a lot more on they are willing to try and use at this point. The willingness to license, I think that is a different conversation, and there's a lot more nervousness there. And there's still, when we talk to instructors, when we talk to faculty especially, there's still those very extreme opinions, I think, on extreme concern all the way to extreme bullishness. I think that's come a little bit closer together over the last several months. It's just a little less extreme at this point, but there's still very strong opinions out there. And as soon as you have to pay for those, especially when the technology is unproven in some of these areas, I think that's where it'll be interesting to see how that evolves over the next several months.
Yeah, we'll have to have you back again. It'll be like, every few months we get an update. I wonder, as we begin to wrap up, Nicolaas, where do you stand today on advice you might offer our listeners regarding, today anyway, the best way to frame what we might call the human-AI partnership? That is, how do we retain focus on supporting humans and what they do best while letting AI tools do what they do best? What advice would you offer us?
To me, that is one of the most important things that we've got in front of us. I think someone put it the other week as humans for the best, machines for the rest. But I think the research is increasingly showing that when humans and AI work together, and a human uses the AI as a tool to help solve problems, that is where I think the real sweet spot would be. But I think that human in the middle, human in control component, where the human is ultimately responsible for reviewing anything that comes back, kind of approving anything that comes back, and ultimately generally providing the direction of how the technology gets applied in a useful way. I think that is the absolute sweet spot. And I was attending a really good talk last week about the 6 waves of AI from an AI professor at Columbia University. And that is what he said as well. He said, we are only scratching the surface at this point of what is going to be possible in the future. The technologies behind this are very scalable, and they can grow and grow and grow over time. So we're not even scratching the surface yet. But what is going to be incredibly important is the role of humans, in that they now need to direct that power in the right places and in the right directions. And so that is critical. And if I think about education specifically, to me, that is the one non-negotiable in all of this. I think we have to stay true to always having a human in the middle, a human in the loop, that can make sure that that kind of inaccuracies or bias or anything else doesn't just slip through the cracks, and that there's a lack of ownership. And so, especially within education, that is going to be so critically important.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's awesome. And while I said it half jokingly, I mean, maybe we do need to check back in with you periodically because this is all moving so very quickly. And while we do need to stay focused on the human element in this, we do need to sort of align ourselves with using what's available, right? And so as the technologies shift, then we've got to adjust, I guess, somewhat. So great having you back, Nicolaas. And on behalf of Tom, who will join us in the wraparound, and myself, thanks for joining us again.
My pleasure. I'm looking forward to the next one already.
So, Kelvin, that was your interview with Nicolaas Matthijs. I really enjoyed that conversation.
Yeah, very knowledgeable, right? And I so appreciate many of the insights, but just the perspective that Nicolaas brings to the table on this topic.
Yeah, so can I highlight one that particularly resonated with me? And I thought it was very brilliant because it's something that I've been saying for a while. It validates my own opinion, which makes it brilliant, right?
That makes it good, yeah. Right.
Yeah. But, he was saying how this AI tech is being kind of more and more intentionally integrated into just the regular platforms that we use. Right. We're not quite there yet, but rather than from just a straight bolt-on, which is what we've had in many cases, and as you said, just to say we have AI, right, as opposed to really thinking deeply about how it can really add value to whatever the product is. Now it seems to be kind of being layered in a way that is adding some value, and I think it's only going to get better. And that's when I think real AI adoption and maybe even literacy to a certain degree will really take off. Because how many people are really going into ChatGPT and doing stuff or building their own like complex prompts to create sort of their own GPT bot? I mean, we know people doing that, but I think the vast majority of the population are not. And once it gets built into the word processor or the whatever, the spreadsheet or the whatever you're using in a real kind of integrated, fluid way, then I think we're going to see it just explode.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that, really. I suppose I worry about so many things, but I guess I worry that, and we kind of talked about this in Nicolaas's earlier visit, that with AI integration, with AI being less obvious, even though it's more relevant and more powerful, it may be more mindless adoption, by some, and may not be more thoughtful. And we need people to be mindful about certain aspects, anyway, of AI adoption, I think. So that's the part that worries me a little, tiny bit, I guess. Yeah.
Well, we think about just typing in say a Microsoft Word document. Now it's predicting the end of my sentence. And oftentimes it's right. Not always, but often it is. And
sometimes I change my words just to spite it.
I might do that too on occasion.
No,
I
you don't know what I was thinking.
better. That's right. Yeah, I'll show you. But I think that will soon get to the point where people they don't even realize like that's AI, and they just start typing and they just click, space bar, and they finish the sentence for them.
Yeah, but then this whole thing of adoption, like I was fascinated. Nicholas told that story right about, and I've been pondering it ever since we had the conversation about, okay, split screen. A year ago, year ago, something that, some AI assistance that's built in, that's really like instructional designer, faculty member facing, and people are all spun up about it, right? Because it was in 2023 and generative AI. Oh, everybody's more nervous than a bunch of long-tailed cats in a room full of rocking chairs, right? And then a year later, now it's student-facing, and you can just kind of hear the developers all kind of like, kind of like holding their breath, and then everybody's like, okay, yeah, that sounds great. Student-facing, you're not freaked out. It'll be all right. And that's the picture he painted, and I'm like, I've just really been trying to make sense of that. Like, why is that? Have we become so numb so quickly? I don't know. I don't know what the deal is with that.
Yeah, I don't either. Maybe there are, if we can speculate, a couple of things going on. One would be that it has become more ubiquitous and it's a little less scary, and we're starting to accept it more, just societally or as an industry. And then maybe there's something about the audience. So maybe it's less threatening to faculty and administrators who would purchase this stuff directly if it's pointed at students. It might be viewed as helps me do my job better, maybe by helping these students, and feels less like it's a threat to replace them. Again, I don't know either one of those is true, but it just feels like maybe it's possible.
Yeah. I mean, that may be, that's possible. And then, but I mean, you probably do too. I still run into people who are all like, I think I have a meeting coming up with people in roles that should remain anonymous that they want to talk to me about the faculty-facing programming that we're offering, promoting the wise use of artificial intelligence in the teaching learning process. I'm like, looking so forward to that conversation as, people want to share their concerns with me about encouraging AI use. I can tell you what I'm likely to say, but I'm going to listen very attentively first and smile and nod.
Yeah. It's hard to avoid. If you say, I don't want to use AI, okay, you're not going to use Microsoft Word or Google,
Right. No, that's exactly right.
It's probably not what they mean.
No, I did like, I don't think Nicolaas cited his source, but, he said this co-opted quote that he passed along, right? Like, humans for the best, AI for the rest. I mean, I kind of like that.
I love that. Yeah, I'm going to steal that.
That's right.
I thought that was really good because, he talked about keeping the human in the center of the whole thing. And it's the same thing, we've talked about when we've had other AI conversations.
Right.
When we had Rohan Jwala on, he said the same thing.
That's right.
So yeah, how do you keep the human in the center of the whole process so you don't just have a bot from a teacher instructing a bot from a student and the humans are off drinking a margarita somewhere? That's probably not the goal of education. Although,
I mean, depending on who made the margarita,
yeah.
I mean, it might be all right. There's some perk to that. Yeah, it would be good probably to have Rohan back at some point. And I think about people like Dr. Chris Dede from the Harvard School of Education. I think we cited him before in a 2023 virtual conference organized by some students at Stanford. I can't remember his turn of phrase, but he too was making this point about this partnership between humans and AI. And he had some elegant turn of phrase for the synergy that emerges from a successful partnership. It was something along the lines of like augmented intelligence or some such thing. We'll find a link to that recording of his appearance and stick it in the show notes. But I mean, I think people like Chris That's insightful. That's the aspiration we want to be moving toward, I think.
Yeah, I agree. Sort of this prosthetic extension of your own ability. Yeah. Maybe the last thing that we kind of have time for, but I was intrigued by your bringing up the Gartner hype cycle. Oh, yeah. And his response sort of surprised me, where he said, I don't think AI should even be on that. But what was it? The problems or something that they're trying to solve should be on it. And I don't know if I entirely agree with him, but I think I know where he's getting at. I'm thinking maybe like the individual applications of AI might be their own separate hype cycles. So like what's in Microsoft Word would be different than what's in some, I don't know, medical tool, or what's in some banking tool or whatever. I think they're all going to be different. But I also couldn't help but speculate. I took a lot of classes like this in my doctoral program. We looked at the history of science and technology and stuff. So you're in my area of interest here, but I won't go on, I promise. Maybe, is it more like electricity or the television or radio or something, which I'm not sure there was a real trough of disillusionment in those things. Maybe there was, but I suspect if there was, it wasn't very deep and didn't last very long.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I appreciate you bringing that part up too. I've been pondering that as well ever since we had the conversation. And I had a sort of reaction to you. I think threading the needle a little bit, right? That I'm like, I kind of get what Nicolaas was getting at, but then I kind of felt like, So I think the way that you phrased it of the particular applications maybe belonging more than the more generic broad technology. Yeah, I think that's fair. So that's not a bad thing to check in on now and again as well. How disillusioned we all feel.
Yeah. All right. So should I put a bow on this one?
Yep.
Give it a try here. So the AI-assisted technology landscape, as we know, is changing faster than most of us can possibly keep up with. However, staying dialed into technology trends is really important for digital learning professionals like us as we seek to support wise use of AI in higher ed.
Wise use. Yeah, that's that's right. Before we get out of here, I know we're probably running a little bit over, but you mind if I just slide in a little plug? Don't hang up the recording yet. Don't hit stop. But if you don't mind, dear listeners, new or seasoned, would you please help us crowdsource the topics that we address in an upcoming special Topcast Live event? We have had these Topcast Live things before, but this is going to be an extra special event at the 2024 OLC Accelerate Conference as part of OLC's 30th anniversary. We're going to do a special thing where I'll even kind of hint at it a little bit. We're going to speculate about 30 years into the future. I laugh just because it's so ridiculous that we're going to actually attempt that. But if you would please use the following short URL and share with your colleagues, we would love to get your input on a few ideas that we're kicking around. So here's the short link. It is using the dub shortening service, that is D as in dog, U as in underwear, and B as in boy, .sh. S as in Sam, H as in ham. That's dub.sh/Topcast2024. Dub.sh/Topcast2024. Please take a moment right now and respond. We'd appreciate it.
We'll put that in the show notes too, I'm sure. Awesome. Well, thank you, Kelvin. Thank you, Nicolaas, for coming back and sharing your insights. Until next time, for Topcast, I'm Tom.
I'm Kelvin.
See ya.